Welcome to this week's deep dive video. We're going to be taking a deeper look at Mark chapter 3. And if you've not had the chance to listen to the sermon from this week over Mark chapter 3, I encourage you to go check that out because this video will make a lot more sense if you've heard the sermon from last week. But in Mark chapter 3, we see that Jesus calls his dream team. He picks his dream team. And this was not the group that you or I would likely put together. This was a bizarre group of people. Now, Jesus has something interesting happen right at the tail end of him picking his disciples. You see, Jesus calls his 12 apostles, his 12 disciples, he calls them, and then this happens starting in verse 20. It says, "Then he went home, and the crowd gathered again, so that they could not even eat. And when his family heard it, they went out to seize him, for they were saying, 'He is out of his mind.'" Jesus' family hears about Jesus picking his disciples, Jesus being back in town, and Jesus teaching, and they say, "He must be out of his mind." They go to seize him, it says. Not, hey, they went to go talk to him and say, "Jesus, you sure about all this? Jesus, you doing okay?" None of that. No. They go to seize Jesus. They're going to take him home, whether or not he wants to go home. That is their goal. That is their goal. And now it does not get better in this passage. In fact, it gets a little worse. At the end of Mark chapter 3, in verse 31, it says this, "And his mother and his brothers came, and standing outside they went to him and called him. And a crowd was sitting around him, and they said to him, 'Your mother and your brothers are outside seeking you.' And he answered them, 'Who are my mother and my brothers?' And looking about at those who sat around him, he said, 'Here are my mother and my brothers. For whoever does the will of God, he is my brother and sister and mother.'" Jesus' family shows up again. Jesus is in the middle of teaching. He's in the middle of teaching, and his family shows up. And they're there to take him home. And it's caused enough of a stir that the people in the house, or the people that are listening to Jesus, go to him and they say, "Hey, Jesus, your family's outside. Your family's outside, and they want to talk to you." Now, this has to be something, at least for me, maybe not Jesus, I'm far from Jesus, but maybe this for me would be super embarrassing. Your family shows up in the middle of you doing something like this. You've got a crowd gathered around you, and you're teaching them, and your teaching gets interrupted because your family's outside, and they want to talk to you. They want to take you home because they think you've lost your mind. This is what's happening to Jesus right after picking his disciples. This is how he is treated in his hometown by his own family. Now, something we can learn from Jesus in this passage is often when we are on track with God and we are in line with his mission, it does not make sense to those who are not in him, those who are not on the same mission, those who are not trying to bring glory and honor to God. It doesn't make sense when we are. It doesn't look right. It looks like we're a little out of our mind, right? So Jesus is out there trying to glorify God, on mission with what God has called him, and even his own family says he's lost it. So he snapped. Jesus finally snapped. Time to bring him home. This is their response. And I hear this sometimes from people, especially when they're new believers, that they've met Jesus, they're following him. And one of the things that Jesus promises to do is transform you, to make you a new creation. That the old is gone, the new has come. You're going to start talking differently. You're going to start treating people better. You're going to start being a better employee, a better husband, a better child, a better parent. You're going to start being better at these things because you're doing all of them for his glory. And he's blessing you with wisdom the whole time through. The Spirit's working in you, helping hold you accountable for some things, and earning into your conscience the idea of God's will in your life, right? This is what happens when you follow Jesus. You're going to start to look different. You're going to turn down opportunities that you used to jump at. You're going to have friends frustrated with you and disappointed because you're behaving differently and not participating in the things you used to. And they're going to look at you and say, "You've lost your mind." And sometimes this is so discouraging, but Jesus, in this passage, he keeps his eyes on God. It's not that he didn't care about his brothers and sisters and his mom. It's he cared much more about what God thought and what God had called him to do. This is such an incredible moment where you see Jesus, he's losing his traditional support system, is abandoning him. And he knows clearly what God would have of him, but his family is saying, Jesus, cut it out. This is not you. This is not who you are. Go back to being the old you. We liked the old you. Come home. And Jesus is so focused on God's will, he says, who are my brothers and sisters except those who do the will of God? He's saying, look, I care much more about what those who are called to the same mission think. I care more about what those who are in line with God and his will, I care more about what they think than those who are standing against it, even if that's his own family. And now, Jesus' disciples go on to learn from that example. In fact, they are mocked and ridiculed and beaten throughout their ministries as they go tell people about Jesus. They are mocked and beaten over and over and over and over again, and ultimately give their lives for the sake of telling people about Jesus. But they keep their eyes on Jesus just as Jesus had kept his eyes on God the Father. We see they keep their eyes on him. And they stayed so focused on the mission that he had given them to go to the ends of the earth, sharing the gospel. They stayed so focused on him that it did not matter, even to the point of it costing them their lives. They were not deterred. They stayed true to the course. I hope we can learn from this ragtag group of guys and this leader of theirs who was assumed to be out of his mind by his own family. This man, Jesus, Emmanuel, God in the flesh. I hope we can learn from his example. And instead of being focused on what people who are in this world think or of this world think, that we are concerned about what he thinks. That we're willing to endure a little criticism here for the sake and glory of the gospel. I hope that you have enjoyed this week, and I hope that you tune back in on Sunday. I hope that you can be here in person with us on Sunday as we look at Mark chapter 4. But if you can't, I hope that you join us online, because I am really excited to continue going through the life of Jesus, to see more of what happens with him and those who are following him. Hope to see you Sunday.